Hello, and welcome to the Urban Polling Podcast. I'm your host, Joy Cochran, by trade, a doctor of physical therapy, owner of Joy Explorations, and a member of the clinical evidence team for Urban Polling. Today, I had the privilege of interviewing JJ Mowder-Tinney, one of my mentors through the NeuroSpark network, and a true leader, or GOAT, as they would say in our profession. She is going to enlighten us on where she got her drive and work ethic, touch on the current research on capacity and performance, and unbeknownst to me, she dives into her honest opinion about the Activator polls, our Activator continuing education course for allied health professionals, and how she sees the Activator polls playing an integral role for the future of physical therapy and to improve the quality of life for our patients and clients. This episode is packed full of useful nuggets of information and resources that you definitely do not want to miss. So let's get started. Welcome, JJ. Thank you for being here today. I'm actually really ecstatic that you're joining me for the Urban Polling Podcast. And I'm being serious because I was actually really nervous or a little apprehensive and felt a little guilty asking you to be on here because you are such a busy person.
Oh.
I'm going to let you give all the details and introduce yourself, but you are always running and doing things. I know you're faculty at a university, you travel across the country doing continuing education classes, you're the lead mentor for neuro rehab, and you even have your own podcast. So I'm not sure how you do it all, but you are one of the true leaders that's instrumental in making positive changes for our profession. And I personally want to say thank you. But really, when I'm looking at how I've grown as a clinician, you're translating the research and encouraging clinicians to take it into the clinic, utilizing the principles, but in a way that doesn't make you be perfect, right? So I don't have to stress out about being perfect. You're like, try something, see what happens, see what your client does, and let your creativity take over from there. So that has again really instrumentally changed me, and I know so many other people. So thank you very much for being here and for doing all that you're doing.
Oh, Joy. Well, I don't even know what to say after that. You're gonna make me no, super, super sweet. I was very excited, Joy. I know we've known each other for a while now, but I've gotten to know you better more recently and being in NeuroSpark and part of Neuro Collaborative. And I am very grateful for that because you have taught me so much, especially just recently, in regards to the Activator Poll course that I took. But first, just I guess there's so many things I want to talk about, so I always get distracted. But
Let's dive in. Can I dive in and have you tell us how you got to be such to where you are today and so inspiring for so many people?
I really am humbled and grateful when people say that. That's not how I think of it. I just have a very strong desire to learn, and I have a very strong desire to tell therapists to be nicer to themselves and that there are no right answers. And I really believe that truly comes from my mom. So she passed a little short time ago, and I grew up in her PT clinic because she was a physical therapist. And, she was the first woman in Colorado to start a private practice, and she didn't know what she was doing. I mean, she literally was a farm girl who grew up on a farm, who was told she couldn't go to college because she wasn't the boy, and was given a little piece of corn land that her dad said, okay, we'll farm that, and if you get any money from it, then you can go. She applied on her own. She left Nebraska, showed up, got accepted, had very little money, went to Boulder, Colorado to go to the CU Boulder, and just kind of started on her own, not knowing what she was doing. She just wanted to learn. And her dad said, you can be a nurse or you can be a physical education teacher, or a teacher. And she didn't want to be a nurse and she didn't want to be a teacher, but she looked up physical education teacher, and underneath that was physical therapy. And she's like, I want to do that. And that's how she went on to Boulder. And then she got accepted to CU Denver and met my dad, who was a pharmacist with his other 3 pharmacist brothers at CU. And then she wanted to start her own clinic. She wanted to do it her way, but no one had ever done that before. And people told her she couldn't do that. And she worked in the nursing home. She'd take me to the nursing home in the morning. She started this clinic where no one was sending her anybody because she was this woman who didn't know what she was doing. And she just started meeting doctors and impressing them. And so my dad had a pharmacy and her clinic were connected. They bought kind of a building together and she just built a network. And she was the one that people sent when no one knew what they're doing. And mom always said, well, I don't know either. You just have to try. You just have to try. We'd go on vacation and she would literally treat people who didn't speak English and treat them the whole time. She met this guy on the beach who damaged his hand and couldn't play guitar or do construction work anymore. Couldn't speak English. Mom couldn't speak Spanish. She treated him every morning and every night the whole time we're on vacation. And afterwards, he played guitar for us and they threw us a big party, even though they didn't have any money because they lived on the beach. So that's the environment I grew up in. And, she was just like, she felt mean to her. And she just was always like, people need to be nicer. We're just doing the best we can. She put a pool in 1980 when everyone said, what would you do pool therapy for? Like, that's stupid. And my mom's like, I think it's a great idea. And she did it. Like, it was so fascinating to me how she didn't know how to do things. And I felt like she just said, I just tried. And so I think when you say, oh, you're doing all these things, one thing is I don't have kids and I have a husband of 30 years who's like the most supportive person ever, or I wouldn't be able to do all that I do, but very tolerant. But it's more of, for my mom's philosophy, it's like just keep trying to learn. And if a door opens, just walk through it. Like, don't feel like you have to know. And I think that's translated a bit just because, again, we went in different directions, obviously, but it's translated a bit when I go to so many courses and I hear so many amazing people talk and so many great things. But when therapists are like, I don't know the answer, and I'm thinking, so neither do I. But I try and then I pay attention. If it doesn't work, I just keep thinking, why didn't that work? And then I try something else. So I think as long as and then you try something else and you just keep gaining that information. But once we put this pressure on ourselves that we have to have the right answer and use the right thing, but we don't feel with our patient population, with our setting, with the pressure you're getting, people are getting from the higher ups, with the complexities of patients' psychological being and where they live, that you can put all those pieces together. And the brain just by itself was already complicated before it had damage. So like, that seems so arrogant to me to think that we can just think that we have the right answer, but we feel we care so much about our patients that we so want to help them. And if we just had the right answer, and I felt like that for so long. And now I'm so grateful for my patients and so for therapists and students, but I just kind of look at it as, let's look at this together and be excited about it, as opposed to, I can't do that the way it says in an article because of all these different components. So I can't do it at all. Let's try to vary it up. So I do like to think of myself, or it's my dream maybe, to translate research into practice with everybody's help. So I don't know, that's probably longer than you want.
No, I love it. So there's two things here. One's completely off topic. Your mom was from Nebraska?
Yeah, she grew up in Alliance, Nebraska. And actually I was born in Alliance only because I was born on Easter morning. So we were there for Easter visiting my grandmother because Easter, it was a big deal. And so I was born on Easter morning. So I was born in Alliance, but I grew up in Colorado.
So I'm from Nebraska. Both of my
Oh,
grandparents are farmers from Nebraska. So maybe it's farm girl stubbornness or something like that. Like I can totally see where she's coming from. Like, oh, you can't tell me what to do. Like, I'm going to prove you wrong.
and a hard worker. I mean, just 5 kids. I mean, I'm the youngest of 5.
Yeah.
And, doing all that. So she, when people go, you're a workaholic, I always like to reframe it. My work ethic does come from my mom. That's just where it comes from.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so the other I didn't realize that. So that was pretty cool. But the other thing that I wanted to take from that is do you think that the perfectionism, does that come from, I always thought it was taught in PT school, right? Like if this happens or if you see this, then you need to know that you should treat it like this. Or was that just me trying to be a perfectionist and that's how I translated what they were saying to me? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
versus how you're taking things now and being like, we know the principles,
Well,
we know what the research says, and then let's figure it out.
right.
Not so
I think
black
there's
and
a
white.
couple things. I think that um, in general, generalizing, PTs kind of have a certain type. They're a little type A, so they are tracked, so you see a bigger group of that type of, you know, very strong directed. I don't want to make that sound bad. I'm just saying that, we want to have the answer, we want to do it right, that kind of thing. And then you have programs. I mean, I've taught for a long time in PT programs where you have to write tests and you also have to get them to pass the board. So you need an answer and you need to make sure they're safe. And so, I was joking when I first started teaching at NAS and I was DCE and I taught all the neuro stuff, but I was 12-month faculty and they're like, oh, you had to teach in the summer. So you had to teach like the first class, like foundational intro to whatever, passive range of motion, MMT, and guarding. And I was like, I don't want to, but the guarding one was really hard for me because they're like, oh, teach them to block the knee. And I was like, yeah, but really, we shouldn't, And they're like, but they have to be safe and teach them step 2 gait pattern for patients with stroke. And I was like, really? Because I don't want to do that either. And because I was like, no wonder they have so many problems when they get to neuro because I'm like, oh, don't do that, don't do that. And they're like, no, they're not going to be safe and they're going to, and we can't allow them to err and don't let them plop and, all these things. And I think that first semester or quarter, when you're in PT or OT school, I mean, you do what you're told and you make sure they're safe because you don't want to fail your practical because that's like the worst scarring of your life that you remember forever. And I understand you need a little black and white because there's so much gray that it's really can be overwhelming. So I get it. I don't like it, but I get where you kind of have to be really strict and make sure people are safe. And then they're supposed to start to merge out. But I don't know that everybody has the chance or maybe the mentorship or the time and the continued desire to learn. They're just kind of assuming that they're wrong. I mean, the number of therapists that email and are like, oh, because I always say, I want to let your leash off. Let's take your leash off, because you're choking yourself.
Right.
And it really is truly kind of a choking. And it was just like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And it's just because kind of we were trained differently. So I think and again, I perseverate a little bit on it, but we got to be kinder to ourselves. Just be nice. We're learning, we're trying, we're learning from everybody and just pay attention. We care about our patients. We all do. We're going to make sure they're safe. Let them plop, but the chair doesn't slide out from underneath them. Allow some of these things. Nothing has to be perfect, and really it shouldn't be to allow error. And but that this is my other favorite, so cliche, but this is a journey, not a destination. So let's just tap the brakes a little bit and try to enjoy that some. So I try, but that's where we're at.
I love it. And so just talking about learning from everyone. So recently I taught the activator course for healthcare
Yeah.
professionals at right before a NeuroSpark Dendrite Day or a day that we did in person. And so you were going to be teaching the next day, and I taught this class the day before. And I was like, oh my gosh, JJ's going to be in my class.
Well,
But
it's
you have an open mind to be able to come. But there's so many therapists that look at me and they underestimate the power of the activator poles. Like
fun.
they look at me and they're like, I already know how to use poles. I don't need a 4-hour course. So can you kind of
No. I represent that remark. I'll admit it, Joy. And my schedule, it is really, really busy. It's a little too overwhelming to be honest. But so I mean, I considered. I was like, could I use those 4 hours or because I didn't know I had to drive a ways because I was staying on another side of California, and so I was like, I have to drive there, and then I'm going to drive back in traffic, and so it's really going to be a 6.5 hour day. And like I considered just how much work I could get done in that 6.5 hours without anyone bugging me since I was there by myself. But I just enjoy you immensely. And I was like, no, I really want to understand these better because I bought my own pair. I have a couple pair here. I paid for them myself because I really wanted to understand. And I liked them. But man, it was so worth my time. And to me, time is everything. So I really would encourage, like someone said to me the other day when I was talking about the polls, they're like, oh, I have polls. And I'm like, but not these polls. And that sounds so really isn't a poll, a poll, a poll. But no. And I had kind of one of those, oh my gosh moments when we were there because I had done, it's just so weird, everything happens for a reason.
Yep.
So I love the polls from an intervention standpoint, working with therapists. I'd taken them down. I drove down to West Virginia to an amazing facility, and I had these polls, and one of the therapists there was like, my dad was admitted. You have to go help him. And when I saw him walking all bent over, and she's like, oh, he's really stubborn. Oh, he's not gonna. I go, I brought these polls. Like, you should try them with him. And so I was like all excited, and he was a little sassy, and then he came back down. He's like, "Oh, try those bowls." And for someone who's always bent over, that lip, I swear, sorry if I say the wrong terms, but the lip on the
But that's
pole
okay. Yeah.
that you push down into that gets lats activated, like that reinforces content I talk about. And then you showing these different ways that you could do them in different positions. That wasn't even the aha moment, right? Because I'd done that, and then this reinforced it, and I was like, oh, I didn't know how much upper extremity activation that got, and oh, I didn't know how I was getting trunk at the same time, and oh, I mean, I just kept saying that, but then it kind of hit me. Um, so doing the podcast for MedBridge, so it's not my podcast, just to be clear. I don't want MedBridge. I I am lucky enough to be one of the people who does interviews for MedBridge's Neuro Navigator podcast, which you can hear for free on Spotify and Apple. That's why I like it. Or through MedBridge and get CEUs. And so I was like kind of excited, but didn't know what I was doing. But I got to interview Darcy Reisman. And this Darcy Reisman is like one of those key researchers in high intensity gait training and all these other pieces. And she's always so incredibly kind to me. Every time I've met her, just talked briefly at CSMs and stuff. And so she was one person who's like this hardcore, amazing researcher who works at University of Delaware, where they have a pro bono clinic. Like she's just like everything and kind.
Right.
So I was nervous. That was the one podcast I think I was the most nervous doing. And she had this article on capacity versus performance and talking about how they studied it. So capacity, just so that we're all on the same page, or functional capacity, that's looking at like when we're in the clinic and we assess someone on the clinical tests, like the 6-minute walk test or gait speed, or, so it's like the standardized tests, their capacity to do those standardized tests versus
Correct.
performance, which is that activity that someone actually does when they're out in the free living environment. What do they actually do? And so she was talking about high intensity gait training and how amazing with capacity and how capacity changes. And then they did this extensive research, major researchers, but they weren't seeing the change in performance. And she said, so there's a discrepancy between improvement in capacity and improvement in performance. And she said her heart dropped to her feet. She couldn't believe it. How do you improve someone so much in clinic with the therapist in capacity, but not have it carry over to performance with this type of intervention?
Into the real world, into
the
their
real
daily
world.
lives.
Right.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
she's like, oh my. And so, so she's just very forthright. And so she talks about the importance of intensity, which we all know, and however we do it, like, let's just get it done, but how we need to find more ways to get carryover, like counting steps, like we do with the watches. How many steps did I take today? Or more motivational interviewing, or she called it modified motivational interviewing in her current
Yep.
research. But finding out what they care about, like things that we do, but like, researchers are trying to really structure this.
Right.
So anyway, so I have that in the back of my mind and how much I really was grateful I got a chance to do that. And then, then thinking about this course, I actually don't know the sequence of everything, but it was then thinking about this course and using the polls and thinking, and you talked about people love these. Like they had regular poles and they walked with them, but then you get these that are sturdy and can take your weight and are meant for that and are ergonomically better and don't have the straps that could break your wrist if you fall. Like just, and you're training them in the clinic and they're more likely to use them outside and they're fun and they look cool. And, like there's just, that's what we're looking for. Like that's what people like. And I was like, I think that is one way. I'm not saying there are multiple, but that's one option for a certain number of people that could really make a big difference if we set them up to be successful with those poles. And then you could use them in other positions, like you showed how you could incorporate them into supine and how you could incorporate them into sit to stand. And I'm like, you just made me a circuit right there that they could do at home when we're searching so hard to try to find this carryover to get people more active at home and to get this carryover to home and or not just home, but you know what I mean, their living
Right.
environment. Like that, you could walk into a church with those and then stand up from the pew better. And you could lower one and have it so that you could kneel better down when they're kneeling or whatever. Because I met someone that was really important to them and so experimented with that a bunch. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I was surprised at how excited I was, which I do get excited about things, but this just made a lot of sense to me. And I do think it's a challenge. Having said that, now, I've been, because I do continuing ed almost every weekend. And so, and when I bring it up, I can see what you're saying, like in their eyes. They're just like, oh yeah, we have pulse. And so I was like,
Yeah.
oh, can you bring them when I'm doing privates? And then I was like, oh, well, but these aren't poles. I mean, they're poles. They're like little sticks that you walk with, but really, and then when I have them try the other, they're like, oh, it really is a game changer, but I don't know how you help get past that view because again, I didn't think that exactly, but I definitely underestimated. I definitely underestimated it.
It's about getting them in their hands, right? Like as soon as somebody puts them in their hands, they're like, oh, yeah, are completely different than anything I've ever had in my hands. But yeah, it's really hard to get people past that. Or now because I'm teaching the class and everybody's like, well, you're not a clinician anymore, you're a salesperson. I'm like, oh my
Oh
gosh,
yeah,
first
no.
and foremost, I am a clinician and I would never put anything in anybody's hands that I did not 120% believe in. And actually, I use the polls on a regular basis I always try to test things out before I give them to my clients. So I'm
Mhm.
using them as my assistive device in my environment for a whole month. I used them. I got up, I put the poles in my hands just to feel them and what are my clients going to come back to me on. And I take them through the airport because I know that those kind of things. So I just, yeah, the polls have been game changers for so many of my clients. And thinking about this capacity and performance, I started my own company outside of urban polling called Joy Explorations for that very reason. Like I was seeing improvement in the clinic, but I wanted to be able to help them with their performance in their real life world. And I knew when I did that, I needed to become more involved with urban polling because those polls are transformational for so many clients. I mean, you think about it in the real world, like being able to actively go out into a park and feel confident doing that, like those polls are going to help. And then they'll be able to go out to the park more often and with their grandkids and do all those kind of things. So, yeah, obviously, I'm sitting here like I'm passionate about like just getting the word out about the polls for so many people. So,
Well, and I get it now. I totally get it. And I would say, it's different. To me, a salesman is saying this is the answer to most of your people, most of your patients. But if you tried it with someone and it didn't work, you would give them a walker. And if that didn't work, you'd try a cane. I mean, this is one of those things where it's an option, but it is a significant option that I think could counter. I mean, when you think about midline, I mean, once someone's using a cane, and they're leaning so heavily. And the secondary limitations that occur from that, from shortening of the ankle, because shortening of the ankle, OT and PT, that is a limiter that later down the line, it just is like a snowball effect. Once it gets shorter, it gets shorter. Then it's so short that when they shift over, they get clonus because they can't get that full foot down. So then they weight shift over less. Then you're not getting any activation of the muscles in that side. I mean, so you could say, oh, well, they can walk really good, but they're going to have to walk forever with the device because we're not getting them over there to utilize those muscles to get the motor unit recruitment. So once you do something like a pole, like I remember way back when I was at Nazareth and at the pro bono clinic, but I was traveling and I walked by the international kind of area and I saw all these people with lost strand crutches, forearm crutches, whatever, Canadian
Right.
crutches,
Yeah.
whatever you call them. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of people. Like, and I didn't realize like everybody in Europe uses, forearm
I
crutches,
didn't
whatever.
either.
And so, but I was like, because I do tend, not in a creepy, stocky way, because I only do it once, but I do tend to follow someone like you guys do in the airport and say, like that's an interesting gait pattern. Like, why are they doing that? And that's an interesting way to use your cane. Like, what's up? What's going on with that? But I was watching someone walking with one, and I was like, wow, that midline looks way better just using one than if they were using a cane. And they're able to walk so much quicker, obviously, whether it was a straight cane or a quad cane for sure. So I went back and I was like all excited. I get all excited. I'm like, everybody's going to use a lost strand crutch. You get a lost strand crutch. You get a lost strand crutch. Right. So I was trying to get the patients to use it and they hated it. They looked so much better with it. They were so much better aligned, but they hated it because once they couldn't stand up with it, and then they had to adjust it, and then they had to try to stand and balance themselves and get their arm in it, and it was like a brouhaha. And I was like, what, like, oh, that's not going to work. And now you have this cane that, or a pole that can work so much better, but that they can use for the sit to stand. They don't even need to push up. Now they can really activate and get more weight bearing on the involved side, use the cue as an externally focused cue. I mean, you're just like pulling out the motor learning stuff and layering it on and sprinkling it in for them to sit to stand. And you can experiment to see which way is the best way to do that. I mean, you could even put it in the middle, or they can still use two if they could use that arm, or if they can kind of use the arm but not good enough, you could still do bilateral. Like there's lots of options, and then already be ready once they're up, and then keeping them more neutral. I mean, so obviously you have a ton of experience. I mean, I am curious. I know I'm supposed to be the one, but I am curious, like, you had a couple of your favorite things that you do with them. I would really, I know I know I went to the course, and again, it was what's that called? Activator course for healthcare professionals.
Professional. Yep.
I
Absolutely.
highly recommend activator course for healthcare professionals. So they go to Urban Polling, right? And they go and they look for that course.
Yep.
And I'm not getting any kickbacks for that. I paid, we went and it was awesome. And I think that uh, you'll get so many different ideas no matter what. And I think you get the polls, right? Like the price includes the polls.
Yep, the price does include the polls, and it's 4 hours. And there is, I mean, it's not just us talking about these polls, but there's so much research behind the
Yeah.
polls, right? So it dives into what the research is, and it crosses so many different conditions, right? I was initially introduced for people with Parkinson's, but there's research out there on balance and people with stroke. And I mean, you think about it, and there's probably an article out there in regards to the benefits of pole walking with them. So, and now like you said, I've used them so much that I have people come to me and I'm like, you give me any client that you have or any patient that you have, whatever you want to call them. I could probably find an impactful, not just a way to use them, but some way that person would probably that person would benefit from the poles, whether it be from walking instead of using a cane or a walker, so they're upright and symmetrical, or whether it be in an intervention to help them promote forward lean. I mean, whatever it
Balance,
is,
baby. Balance,
balance,
baby.
or one of the biggest things, like it's to build their confidence. Even like I see so many people treat stepping strategies and people that have balance issues in parallel bars, and they say it's because they want them to be safe and the person to feel confident, but I mean, that's not helping them. They're just improving their reaching strategies. So the poles encourage them to go out into the middle of a big open space to have confidence with their balance in order to start working on some of those balance strategies or vestibular things that we need to be working on. So there's a million different ways, like you said, that we could be utilizing poles.
Well,
And
I
we go
think
over
the balance,
them in the course.
sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just, because I'll lose my thought because I'm seeming to
Yeah,
get older. But for the balance piece, it's fine this because, we need to increase their challenge with the balance. Like they have to feel like they're being challenged. But you have to, so people always ask, but well, if you push that too far, what if they're scared? We're always trying to, my husband always says there's never a perfect answer. There's only trade-offs, right? There's no right solution, just trade-offs. So you're trying to weigh that. You're trying to weigh, okay, I need to challenge them. We know the research says increased intensity. They don't feel like their balance is being challenged. They don't have as good outcomes. And well, we don't want to scare the crud out of them because we know increased fear of falling correlates to increased risk for falls. So that
absolutely.
confidence component. And when you think about the sensory input that is provided when you're pushing down into that handrail and getting the lats. And so now you're getting more sensory input proximally so because they're getting more activation. So then they're up taller, right? So now they're using their head more or less of looking down. But that whole sensory piece and that whole, it was just interesting because the gentleman in West Virginia, once he put, like at first it was awkward. And that's the other thing. Please remember, and you said this in the course, okay, but of course you were right. But like, if you try to sit there, no left, no flat right, no left, no right, left, and try to get them to just give them over cue to sequence right, just walk and just put them where you want them. And it just like in trains, like they get it. And that's what happened with him. They're like, oh no, now move your right foot. Now do the king. No. And I was like, okay, let's not. Just walk, just carry him for a second and then just start seeing how it goes. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that really worked, And I think that that's an important component of like, don't give up. I guess my point is, don't give up if when you first try to start something, it's not working. Recognize maybe I'm over cueing because I think that's a common problem. Try to get them to just relax and enjoy this. They're trying so hard, just like we are. Patients are trying so hard to think and do it exactly the way we want to make us happy. Everybody just needs to, and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, everybody, let's just take a breath and relax, and patients and therapists, and okay, now let's try the movement and how different it is. And I think that if they can come to feel that, I think that gives them a lot more input. And I feel consistently we underestimate the importance of more somatosensory input, right? And proximal
Absolutely.
activation.
Absolutely. And we're talking about all of the awesome things that the poles are providing to our clients. But for them, that ledge just gives them the confidence that their hands aren't going to fall down. They don't have to death grip it, and they can just gently relax their hands there, and it's going to give them the balance that they want. It's as simple as that. For us, we're seeing all these other things. Oh my gosh, it's activating their lats and their arms, and I mean, it's they're great. And like you said, walking is ingrained. We've been doing it since we're babies, and so just putting the poles in their hands after a few steps, 99% of the time it just comes natural. And even if they start out doing it incorrectly, they transition to the proper body mechanics. And that's another thing that, I mean, the poles are so awesome is that walkers don't allow that. Canes don't allow that. Like they allow that natural arm swing or that gait pattern that we want to be seeing from so many of our clients and patients. So.
And the flexion, just as you were talking, I think Walker, they're flexed over. And so now, okay, stiffer hip flexors. Okay, let's just turn off the glutes, whatever. Do we really need them? Yes, we really, really do. And that has been consistent in the research that we need stronger glutes and glute med to prevent falling because gluteal activation and strength discriminates fallers versus non-fallers. So that alignment is a key component to get that activation and then to utilize this from a confidence, but still allow those muscles to activate. That's huge. And, I'm just going to say this because like, if you're listening right now and you're like, okay, like I'll go check out their website. I mean, because I don't talk about like, I give people lists of different equipment when I give courses because people always ask, but I'm looking at my little sunroom here, which is my office, and the piles of stuff I have because I buy, like you said, I buy it first, I try it out first, I have people try it out to say, okay, this could be an option. But if you're gonna, see if your crew could purchase a pair, okay, yay. But I would just strongly encourage the course because if you're gonna get the pulls with the course anyway, like aim for the course because I think what I'm what I think I would have if I would have been active in the clinic, like when I first started, I would have put them in the little container with all the other sticks and everything else that I have and the old poles or whatever. And I'm not sure that I would just be like, oh, I'm just gonna try to experiment with this today, or I'm just gonna try to experiment. I think if you truly want to get the biggest bang for your buck, to take the course will give you so many ideas no matter what. And then you're so much more likely to integrate them. And then you're going to see the more opportunities. And again, go back to what is the research saying? You do a wonderful job of highlighting the evidence in regards to the use of the polls and those benefits. And you talk about that. And because I was thinking, what are you going to talk about for 4 hours? And then all of a sudden 4 hours was up. And I was like, whoa, wait, we didn't even get time to practice that other thing. And we didn't get time to practice that. And it was all very, very interesting. But so there's that literature. But then this new wave. So I'm always interested in where is the wave cresting when it comes to CSM. So if OTs are listening, that's like combined section meeting is the PT's national meeting, right?
Right.
And, I think 2020, rough year, but in general, that was kind of backward walking was kind of like the wave that was cresting at that time, where a couple years before that, it was optimal theory, like there's different
Right.
waves that are cresting. And so you'll see the trend reactive balance was a couple years ago. I mean, earlier, but then it really hit higher. So right now, I think it's this capacity and performance. It's because this is so important. People are getting less and less time in clinic. We have to find and try ways to get this carryover at home to try to, what's our goal? To change people's quality of life and to impact their quality of life. And so we need to start having some key heavy hitters. Step activity monitor. That's a good one. The motivational interviewing, that can go with anything else. But, some of the other systems out there that help facilitate the walking. And I think activator poles are up there. I think that's on the list of options that could really make a big difference with our patients in regards to getting the carryover and improving performance. And I think that's where the wave is. And we just need, in my opinion, we need more therapists out there seeing what works when and for whom. Like, who is the person that just like gravitates? Is it your knowledge of results person, your competitive person? Is it your not so competitive person? I mean, I think it's a huge variety, but I think the more our therapists kind of gather that information, the more likely other people are going to be willing to try it because again, they want to know who am I using this for and how do I use it? And you cover a lot of that, but I think there's still more to learn specifically related to where the evidence is saying we need to study this more. We need to figure this out. And we need all hands on deck to do that. It's not just going to be the researchers, right? The researchers do amazing stuff and give us these things, but then we need to translate that. And so we need people out there who have some things in their back pocket doing that. Sorry.
No, I'm like, thank you so much. Like, I mean, yes, everything that you said over and over and over again. I so appreciate all of this because it's again what I we need more people to talk about this, and that's one of my goals, and it has been for the last few years. How can I get more people to know about the activator polls and how beneficial they can be for their clients? And the activator course for healthcare professionals, it does come with a pair of polls, and we will work with a clinic, customize the course. If you have a group of people that you want to do it by yourselves, we do all of those things. We try to really make it easy
Nice.
for the clinician to be able to take this course and run with it, or yeah, within their company or individually, whatever. And we are going to be at CSM, and we would really love to see everybody there. So if you're listening to this, please come visit us at our booth at CSM. But yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, JJ. I feel like it's one of the best tools that I can be using for a lot of different populations. And some people respond better to it than other people, like you said. But there are so many people that
Mm.
just feel like it is. I mean, it does help them to move more, and sometimes it's the athlete who doesn't want to look like they need an assistive device. Sometimes it's, you know what I mean? Like there's just, I can't pinpoint exactly who they are for the best, but I know our Parkinson's population gravitates towards them a lot. But
I think MS. I mean, yeah, so many, but I'm just picturing that just how much proximal strength they need and to utilize that. Yeah, and I would just reinforce if you are going to CSM, just this is a booth worth stopping by, and so that you can really try it. Because I'm assuming, I mean, you'll have polls there, and people
oh
can.
yes, we will.
Lots of polls, but just to try it because it's really hard to explain how different it feels when you're comparing one to the other. And I would also just to throw out there, I'll be at CSM, and if you see me wandering around and come say hi. Like you're gonna tell me who you are, but like I love it when people say hi when they walk by. So some other people have said, "Oh, I saw you at CSM, but I didn't want to come say hi." I was like, "Why?" Like I'd like you to say hi. So anyway, just shout out, and Joy better say hi. You better say hi to me.
We're hanging out. Sorry.
We gotta go get a drink or something. We'll go mess around. We'll go get we'll go get Aaron and Claire and get our NeuroSpark people involved and see what's going on. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, JJ, I can't thank you enough for your time today and all the wonderful, kind things that you said about the activator polls and urban polling. Um,
Enjoy.
we
Joy
greatly
rock.
and we greatly appreciate you. But you have your own line of clothing, and you have lots of different things that you're affiliated with. I would like to shout out to you. So tell people, and honestly, if you are not following JJ already, like you need, I mean, it would be highly beneficial because she does show tons of different techniques. She highlights tons of different people. So if you're stuck and don't have any creative ideas right now or need some treatment ideas for different populations, like that is where you need to go. I follow you on Instagram. I'm sure you have others, but please tell us how people can find you and learn more about you as well.
Yeah, the Instagram thing is interesting because I don't really know I mean, people just asked me, they kept asking, could you start something and put some of these videos up there so we could see them other than in my courses? So I have been very amazed at how much I love it because I'm just learning so much from everybody. And I go into a lot of the Instagrams, like the sports ones, and then try to jimmy some of their ideas. But JG Mowder PT, I'm not very creative that way. That's my Instagram. jgmowderpt.com is my website. And actually, I'm trying a new thing. It's brand new, a handling course in March here in Rochester because I don't have any spots open to go, but it's going to be purely handling. So day 1, day 2, your polls may make an entrance there. And then day 3 is spinal cord, but you could do the first 2 days or just do spinal cord or all 3. Allie Muehlman, a very dear friend of mine, and I are doing that course together. And so we just want to, it seems like handling, what did Chris from the Neuro Guy PT, the Neuro Guy from Instagram, Chris was like, it's like the lost art right now of handling. So, and I'm used to lecturing, but we're going to do handling. So you can find the handling course there. I did get a new logo and I got merch. But only because I really like inspire, passion, ignite change. Like I like the little logo. I worked really hard on that. And I just thought other people might like that, but that's not. And MedBridge, the podcast, I'm just grateful. They've kept me around for a while now. So I'm very grateful for the courses they allow me to do. But when they asked me to do this podcast, I was just like, I don't know how to do a podcast. I don't even listen. I didn't even listen to podcasts before this, Joy. Now I'm like really getting into them. I just saw you had one up on Huberman. What was it? The lab?
Yeah, the Humorman Lab. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just saved that one and I'm going to listen to that one later. So now I'm getting into it, but I've so enjoyed interviewing people, like all these people who are specialties that I don't have, like vestibular. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't do it, but let's find out. Like, it's very exciting. So that's called Neuro Navigators. And again, you can find that for free on Apple and Spotify. But if you listen through MedBridge, you get the free little 1-pager summary of how could this help you in clinic tomorrow. and CEUs, which I think is pretty cool that they started offering CEUs for that. And so
Yeah,
that's
that's
for PT
awesome.
and OT and neuro and aging adult. So I have a variety of different people I bring on, which I'm always looking for more speaker suggestions so people can send those to me, but that's plenty. NeuroSpark, gotta say,
I was just gonna say,
first
and
say
we've met
Sparkies,
each other through, yeah, the NeuroSpark. Oh, guys.
neurocollaborative.com. You can go there and find out about NeuroSpark. And when we open, I guess we're opening at the end of this month. Yeah, so we're having a launch on ataxia. So if you want to come
And the
free,
polls are gonna be there,
oh, that's right. That's
right?
right. Because Joy is sorry, Joy, I haven't gotten to that part to work on it yet, but Joy helped with is giving me some videos to use, which they look great. They look great, by the way. So I really appreciate that. And so yeah, that'll be that's awesome. Oh, see, full circle. Super cool. Thanks
Absolutely,
again.
yeah.
I just want to thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to I didn't do that on purpose, but joy to talk to Joy. It always is, but thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I'm always open to collaborating. So reach out. And I will see you at CSM if I don't talk to you before then.
Love it. Thanks
Thank you
again.
so much. Bye.